Well, welcome back. We're on our next episode here of The Awakened Stranger. And now we're sitting with Dane. And at the moment, Dane's over in Peru. So I'm going to give you a moment there to introduce yourself, Dane, and share some information about you and what's happened in your life and kind of what's led us to this point of you and I connecting online. So,
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and chatting with you. Let's see. Well, I mean, anyone's story can be as long or as short as they want it to be, I suppose. But in terms of how we connected and a little bit about me and that connection there, when I came across your TikTok a few weeks ago, I think when you first were launching your kind of new campaign, it struck me as something that really resonated with me because I had recently left my job and left the country because it was feeling like a land of diminishing returns for me and my family, and it got to a point where I didn't really know what was next for me in life, but I knew that I needed to make a drastic change. And so my wife is from Peru, and we've got a young daughter, and our young daughter has had some health problems that we've found. We've been getting a lot more support and just helping her get healthier while outside of the United States. So after visiting family a couple of times, we just sort of made the decision, you know what, let's just give it a try. We jumped through all the hoops to try to get my wife her citizenship in the United States. And now we're kind of doing the reverse, the uno reverso, and trying to get me my citizenship down here, and of course our daughter now has dual citizenship, so she's got more passports than either of us. But but yeah, it's I've kind of found that TikTok is a great platform to sort of just express yourself and be yourself, and that was one of the things that I felt like I was really losing over the last number of years, as I was focused more and more on the grind and just what I'm supposed to be doing as opposed to what I want to be doing. And so that's really been my focus over the last however many months now, and really the last few years, is dialing into what matters to me, what at the end of my life, when I'm looking back on it, am I going to have regrets, and what would those regrets most likely be? And I feel like when they tend to be revolving around, I spent too much time at work, or I didn't spend enough time with my family. Those are two things that resonate with me, that I'm like, you know what, I don't want to be the one saying that. So just exploring different ways to achieve what I think is maybe just a more fruitful way of living.
Nice. I love it. I've shared with my wife, we've had this plan of, I'm 45, right? And we had this plan to have everything paid off, the house paid off, and all of our living expenses and debts just taken care of, to where at 50 years old we were going to retire. And
sure.
I just decided that I didn't want to wait 5 more years, and it was a moment where I'm like, it's time to live. I wanted to go experience the world. I wanted to go see places. I've had one time where I got to experience just a vacation in Mexico, and I'd love to see more of South America. So very cool that you're just decided to do it. It's exciting on my end, or I guess I don't want to say jealous, but I'm definitely jealous.
I think there's a lot of fear that comes with it too, though, because, well, first of all, I'm from Minnesota, and if you know anything about Minnesotans, we're very family oriented. We're kind of Latino in that concept, and so we tend to, if we do move away, because I lived in Seattle for a little over a year, and then moved back shortly thereafter, because we're so connected with our families. And when you have all of your family based somewhere in the US, it's a difficult shift and move to say, you know what, I'm going to leave the country. But I just found myself so drawn to that I'm like, who am I living for if not for myself? And for my wife and my kids. So that's kind of the answer that kept coming back into the back of my mind, and at some point you just can't ignore it. So I think, like you probably just realized, hey, I really want to make the most of the time that I'm given. I don't know how much time I have, but I know that 5 years from now isn't guaranteed, and so if I focus on it right now, I'm able to extract more out of this life experience than maybe I would have been able to otherwise. So many people wait so long to retire and have those funds for what? To potentially not even be able to enjoy them. So I hats off to you to make the leap. And that's really what caught my attention with you too, is you made a courageous decision that a lot of people are too scared to make. And I think more and more people are starting to wake up to the possibility that this is maybe a better way to go.
Yeah, well, and I think with the ability to do things online and to work remote or have different ways of making income that wasn't possible back in, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and there's just opportunities now that weren't there. So I think a lot of people are they're realizing that the corporate life, the corporate world is not the same dream that it used to be. So
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
So let me ask you, is there an event that happened in your life that kind of kicked off this life change and the move? What brought it on?
Yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, it's again one of those stories that could be drawn out, or I could shorten it up. So I'll try to make it kind of the abridged version. But I was married once before. I have 2 kids back in the States, living with their mom, and we've got a great working relationship. In fact, my oldest just turned 18. He's graduating in a couple of weeks, so we'll be heading back to celebrate with him. But when that relationship fizzled out and I went into another one, I really think that a lot of my awakening process was a product of realizing kind of my shortcomings as a spouse previously, as a partner, as a father. And you start to get sucked into these layers of guilt, and you realize that a lot of the behavior that you're exhibiting you think is coming from a place of care, but in reality it's coming from a place of feeling like you're not enough and trying to weasel around things in a way that make you feel better about that. So it was 2020. I was in another relationship straight out of my marriage, and the relationship was not a healthy one. And it abruptly ended, and it kind of just uprooted my whole life. I'm like, oh my gosh, now what am I doing? Because I've been with my wife previously since I was in high school. And so I'd never been single really before, because I left the marriage and went straight into this other relationship. And so that forced me to take a look at what I had done and kind of where I'd led my life and what decisions I was making and how I got to where I was. And I mean, I remember I was just in absolute utter despair for a couple of weeks, and it was, multifaceted, because it wasn't just the ending of a relationship. It was the ending of my marriage. Still was kind of suffering from that and struggling, and, not living with my kids anymore. And so there's all these different variables that contributing to my depression, I guess. And then at some point I had my brother visit me on a tough day. And I said, you know what, I'm going to write a book about this. And it was during COVID, where we all were kind of stuck in our houses anyway. And I suddenly had this amount of free time that I don't know if I've ever had. And so I just committed to writing. And I did end up self-publishing a book. And the more I wrote, I think the more I started to realize things about myself. And so I give a lot of credit to taking the time to reflect and write, because I know they talk about that as like a therapeutic tool, but it's super effective. It certainly was for me. So fast forward about a year or so from there, the book is published. I'm going back to work. Things are kind of resetting after the whole COVID thing. And I realized, I've never traveled outside the country. I really should. I'm kind of refining myself, right? You've talked about wanting to travel and enjoying that. So I decided, you know what? I want to travel somewhere. And I was looking for flights, and I found a round trip flight to Lima, Peru for $230.
Oh, wow.
Keep in mind, this was back in COVID times when all these flights were really cheap because no one was traveling. But I was like, what do I care? I don't care anymore. I just I want to start living. And so I booked the flight, and lo and behold, I mean, I'm going to really cut around corners here on this story, but I met my now wife 24 hours later.
Wow.
Just by happenstance. And just how all these things in my life, and really her life too, aligns to a point where we even cross paths is wild in itself. But to now be living and having left the country and have a daughter here and be learning new language and learning a new style of living, it's all a product of what I went through about 6 years ago. And so as hard as that time was for so many people, I'm really grateful that I went through that, because I think that I may not have ever discovered these things about myself and these interests had I not suffered a little bit.
That's crazy. My wife's family is from Chile, Roncawa.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, they came from Roncawa, I believe is how it's said. But she was born in Los Angeles, so born as a U.S. citizen. But so yeah, there's the want for us to go back and visit her extended family that I've never had to meet, and our experience meeting. We met, we're engaged and married in 90 days, and
Oh, wow.
July will be 20 years. So.
No kidding. That's awesome. Congrats.
I've always felt when it's right, and when you know. So
yeah,
very cool.
That's great.
So you'd mentioned you're down there looking at some clothing line and starting that business. What came on with that?
Yeah. So one of the dilemmas, along with this whole awakening process is, for me, it's been kind of trying to discover all the different lies that I feel like we've been fed over the however many years. And where it started for me was food, and just trying to get away from ultra processed food and how the food pyramid doesn't necessarily align with what we were supposed to be consuming, all these things where it's just like, okay, this doesn't totally make sense. So as I started digging into that, I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Now all of our clothes seem to be made out of, polyester and recycled plastics and synthetics. And I've noticed that I don't feel as good when I'm wearing synthetic clothing. And so my wife and I kind of made a commitment to ourselves and to our daughter before she was born that we were going to try to switch our wardrobes to purely cotton or, natural fabrics. And it was relatively easy to find our daughters, the onesies and the sleepwear and all that stuff in cotton. But I'm finding it consistently difficult to find clothing that is 100% cotton or some sort of polyester blend. And so when I just made that commitment to myself, I really wanted to take it seriously. And I found myself spending a stupid amount of time wandering through department stores, looking at every single tag to see how much cotton or whatever other products are in there. And over and over and over, I'm finding that there's polyester in almost everything, and particularly a lot of these luxury brands. And it just seems crazy to me that we're paying a premium for plastic to wear on our bodies, and it loses breathability, and there's the possibility of our skin absorbing these microplastics and things. So I'm just like, I really want to do something about that. And so Gamara is a department. It's a neighborhood or town or city, I guess, within Lima, in the province of Lima in Peru. And it's the oldest standing textile province in South America. And so if you go down to this neighborhood, it's like a city, but the entire city is just businesses for textiles. Oh, wow. So you have all these different luxury clothing brands from the United States that are produced in Peru.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, I mean, if it's all coming from here anyway, why can't I just go find some clothes for myself down there? So the initial thought was, hey, I'm just going to go find some of these overstocked brand clothing or whatever and buy those. But then I'm like, why don't I just buy the fabric myself? Why don't I just buy the shirts myself and make my own brand? And then I can kind of have something that's true to me, as opposed to, like, I don't want to necessarily represent Polo Ralph Lauren or Lululemon or Lacoste or any of these brands that are made down here, right? So that's kind of where it evolved to, and it unraveled, no pun intended, I guess, pretty quickly, because it was just a passing thought to, oh my gosh, I'm spending all my time on this now. Oh, wow. But I've always been kind of artistic, and so I had fun, like, coming up with a logo for the design, and I've been working on a website. I was working on that when you called, and just connecting with different creators. I'm like, you know what? If nothing else, if I produce a product that I can send to some of my creator friends that I know they can feel comfortable wearing, and it's a little gesture of camaraderie, I like that idea. And in the meantime, I'm going to put a new drawer full of T-shirts together in my wardrobe. So that was kind of how that came to be.
That's awesome. I'm very similar. I tend to go all in when I do anything, and hence this. I shared. I posted that video of me leaving my job and knowing I wanted to start a business that made me feel good. And that was the intent behind that message, was to just record myself in those emotions and know that I didn't want to fall back into something that had made me feel so uncomfortable. And it obviously resonated with a lot more people. And here we are a few weeks later and talking around the world. So, I don't know how to not do something all the way. So it's very cool that that's your personality as well. So
it's dangerous sometimes too, right? I mean, it can get us into some trouble because we, at least for me, I know I can get kind of single focused and that's when I'm like, okay, no, I got to reset because remember what the purpose is, what I'm doing this for. And so I have to occasionally kind of check myself. But no, I think if there's anything worth doing, it's worth doing it right. And I don't believe in half-assing things. So I have a lot of respect for people who can, dive with both feet in right away and really commit to it, because nothing is easy, especially when it comes to, trying to start a business from the ground up. And depending on how much you want to do it on your own, I mean, it can be all encompassing. So tremendous respect to you. And that was what resonated with me when you talked about it. It's like, you want to start a business. I've always felt that way, gotten close a couple of times, but sometimes when you get backed into a corner and you really don't have any other alternative, like I do, I don't have a job right now beyond being a quasi TikTok creator. So, at some point there's got to be something that's got a little bit more substance and foundation to it. So, I'm excited to see what you come up with, because there is, and you already are, I suppose, we're participating in the ground level of this.
Yeah, and I like I said, day 1 was the video, and today's day 24, I think. So we're just past 3 weeks, and from that, we've developed the podcast. We've got a support group on Facebook for just people that are kind of going through a spiritual awakening. I've then listed just the other day, I want to, and I'm still trying to figure out how to pay for it, how to make it work, but I would like to create a healing type sanctuary, a therapeutic place. Maui is my happy place. And so that's the first location that I thought of, but I'm like, why not? Why not go create a space where we can have people join together and have healing sessions, meditations, yoga, horseback ridings, plant therapy medicine, medicine, just all of it, and create a space that is, like they say, when you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. And
right.
And it's been a part of my life, just trying to figure out who I was and how to heal and get through generational trauma and deal with my inner child stuff and fix my relationships with my kids. And it's all kind of led from my own personal experiences. But like you said, there's a lot of people out there that are feeling the same. So it's one of those where I listen to a lot of people talk, and a lot of very intelligent people, way smarter than me, that says and in my opinion, our brain is just an antenna. It's just receiving information from a quantum field. And we listen to the message, and we either act on it or that message gets sent on to the next person. And there was a moment that just said, this is your message. Just start sharing things with the world and see what happens. So I've always been the person that doesn't make a decision until I had the outcome already planned out and I knew what was going to happen. And I think that's limited me in my life for a long time. And had a lot of success with stuff, but now it's just, I don't have any expectations. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that every day that I do something like this, I get put into a place where I get to help somebody, or somebody's there to help me, and it feels good. So, I watch a whole lot of content and everything. Follow what feels good until it no longer feels good, and then find the next thing. So right now this just feels way too good.
I've seen a lot like that too.
So, Well, and with your book, what was the context of your book that you wrote? I'd love to hear that.
It's called Male Mindset, and really what it was focused on was reestablishing some masculine behaviors that perhaps have been a bit vilified over the last number of years, but really necessary for kind of the balance of humanity, but also for healthy relationships. Because at least for me, and I know that a lot of other men can resonate with this as well, there's this mentality, I think, that's been driven into us unfairly to convince us that we should be always giving, and we should be, the nice guy, and to kind of put everybody before ourselves. And also kind of lean away from these masculine behaviors, not to be confused with toxic masculinity, which absolutely is a thing, but recognizing that there is some leader type component in the masculine that is necessary for things to kind of work in their optimal ways when it comes to at least monogamous heterosexual relationships, which is where I find myself in. So it's a lot more kind of breaking down all of my missteps and trying to figure out, okay, what went wrong there and why? Because I got really comfortable with pointing the finger at the other person and saying, it's because you did this or because you did that. And instead it's like, okay, how could I behave differently? And so I developed a specific method that I referenced several times in the book called the A.R.C method, A.R.C, where it's, and actually it was kind of inspired by the arc reactor of Iron Man, because I use Iron Man as kind of an influence for recognizing my wrongdoings and trying to do something good. And so he builds that arc reactor, right, to save himself, but to save others as well. And it's to assess your negative feeling or emotion, to recognize why that's not a healthy emotion, and then to course correct and correcting with confidence specifically, because I think that when there's a lack of confidence in the masculine, it lends itself to sometimes bad decisions. So what I did early on, because I was applying this in my life, was, okay, I'm having this negative emotional response to some circumstance in my life. And if I let my emotions run off with it, I would do something stupid that I would later regret. So instead, I would recognize, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and just try to stop for a moment, just a moment, and allow myself to picture what a confident version of me, how that confident version of me would handle this situation. And so frequently when I did that, I recognized that whatever I was doing was almost the polar opposite of what the confident version of me would do. And so it was just a matter of trying to create a sort of repetition in that behavior and that practice until it became kind of my natural state. And I don't think it's something that anyone perfects permanently and never has an emotional response, but I do believe that I'm a much more stable, much more centered person having used that technique. So I didn't know if it would resonate with anyone else, but I knew it worked for me. And I'm like, it's kind of like what you did with TikTok and just putting your story out there. I sort of did it by writing, and turns out like people thought it made sense and they applied it in their lives and they reported back to me with their success stories. And it's rewarding to know that, hey, something that I experienced and shared with other people was able to transfer, and they could apply those same things in their lives.
No, that's very cool. And just you explain that, I'm like, that's exactly how I thought. I feel like for me, maybe like it's probably been about 2-3 months ago, was I felt like I had a shift in kind of my awareness of how I was thinking. But in that, before that, I was definitely stuck in that masculine male, my way or the highway, and you did it the way I wanted it because that's what I said, and then I've recently been able to understand a different perspective. But I truly, I lived a lot of things in my life. I did a lot of things wrong because I would act before I thought, and not slowing myself down to wonder why I'm responding to a certain thing a certain way, and that's amazing. So I definitely need to find a copy of your book.
Well, it's on Amazon, so search Male Mindset, my name, and you'll be able to find it.
Perfect. No, that's very good. Well, as life's kind of changing for you and you're getting adapted into South America, what do you have coming in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been here now for just about 2 months, and I'm working on my my residence, and then ultimately my citizenship with Peru. So that's kind of one of the big focuses. We're still waiting for my wife. So that's the other side of it, is we kind of have to balance both ends of the American immigration process for her and Peruvian for me. But I'm going to lean into being outside the United States for a long time. I've been out for a couple of months. I'm going back in a couple of weeks, and I'll be there for 3 weeks, which I'm really looking forward to seeing my boys, celebrating my oldest graduation, to seeing all my family. We're going to have a graduation party / family reunion there, which is going to be awesome. But my focus when I get back is building out this clothing line and working on learning Spanish. I'm going to enroll in a Spanish course to, I wish I could speak fluent Spanish, because presents itself a challenge sometimes living here. My wife's perfectly fluent in English and French and Spanish and Portuguese. Like she can speak it all, so that's not an issue. But at least for just conducting day-to-day business down here, that is probably one of my biggest hurdles. So that's my focus, I guess, is just trying to grow myself, in different ways.
Nice. And that's, I think a lot of people are, and myself included, is figuring out what I want to do. I've using the side of fear, what have I been scared of doing? And I wrote that down as I came back from my trip from Maui, was do the scary things until you're no longer scared. And so I'm finding things that I'm totally scared of, that is now, I've always had the fear of being seen. And I mentioned in my first video, I didn't dance with my wife at our wedding. My kids have never heard me sing a song out loud. That post has now changed. My family's heard me sing in my truck, and still haven't danced with my wife yet, but that stuff's coming. But yeah, my middle daughter, she works at the zoo here, and she's one of the, I guess, guests encounters is what she does. So she helps the small animals and brings them out so guests can have a close encounter with the snakes or little handheld type animals. And she's overcoming her fear of holding a snake. And I have an absolute fear of snakes. I don't like them. As a little child, I think it was probably my grandma's house. We had an Easter egg hunt, and I was digging through the bushes, and a blow snake that's very similar to a rattlesnake came out of the bushes and just scared me as a little kid. And from that day on, I would never dare to be around one or touch it. And I've once in my life held a little garter snake, and thing's probably 18 inches long and half an inch round, and I was able to hold it for about 10 seconds, and I'm like, that's enough. Like, feeling something that has its whole body move, I just can't do it. And so I told my daughter, I said, if you can show me that you're overcoming your fear of holding a snake, then I will do that. I'll face that fear, and I'll figure out. I said, you might just have to catch him if I drop it, but I'm learning how to do the scary things. And I've always wanted to go skydiving. I don't have a fear of heights, but there's just that fear of what if the parachute doesn't open. So little things like that I'm just now listing as, I almost want to call it my bucket list. Like, I'm going to accomplish my fears. So I think it's cool that there's, I think, a lot of people right now waking up to realize that we've limited ourselves and what we allow in our life because of some fear or some information that we were told as a kid that we've just held on to for no reason. So congratulations on kind of breaking through your fears as well. That's pretty cool.
But that's really what it comes down to, I think, is like you said, it's a matter of overcoming your fear and facing your fear. And I think what's so hard is that these fears are so deeply rooted in us, and we've kind of been enabled to not face them. We've been raised in circumstances that allow us to kind of avoid dealing with those things. And I feel like we're arriving at a point now where that's all coming to the surface, and people are sort of being forced to face them in one way or another. And some people are really resistant to that and scared of that. And I think those are the ones that are kind of keeping their heads buried in the sand. And then there's others like yourself, myself, that are saying, you know what? There's really nothing to be afraid of. In fact, I know there's a popular phrase from FDR that we only have, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And I actually put my own little spin on it. And it's the only, how I put this, the only flaws in humanity are certainty and fear. Because when we fear things, it keeps us from doing the natural thing that we might otherwise do. And I think that really, like you said, it's a limiting thing, because fear always produces a limitation. It never produces an exploration. And then the certainty component throws people off, because everyone wants to be certain in something. But I feel like the moment you commit to absolute certainty on any decision or any belief, you again are applying a limitation, and that limitation will inevitably come in conflict with someone else's limiting belief when they believe something wholeheartedly with absolute certainty. And so I think that's the other obstacle that perhaps humanity is going to be forced to face along with fear in the coming months or years, is what are we absolutely certain of? And should we continue to hold that certainty? Or do we need to start challenging it? Because I think that we're going to be forced to deal with that one way or another, with every different aspect of humanity right now. I feel like is coming into a central focus point of it all kind of colliding at once. So it's an exciting time to be alive, but it's a disruptive time, and I think that certainty and fear both play a major role.
Yeah, no, and I agree, because just similar things with different conversations I've had with people in other episodes, everybody's coming together at this one point from very different parts of their life and different experiences. And I feel like there's a big collective gathering, if you will, of information, of people, of awareness, things that are just totally shifting in the world. And like that, reaching out, starting your own business, doing something different than the normal American dream. That, work for a corporate company for 30 years and retire with a pension is not a thing anymore. So,
right.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like you said, it's a great time to be here. It's definitely something that we're never used to, and I share it with my kids. I'm in a space every single day of my life of a new place as being a parent, as a father, starting some other ideas of how to make money. Like, this is all brand new every single day, and so
yeah,
we definitely don't have the owner's manual. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's we've kind of blank canvas in front of us, which in a way is a blessing. It can feel like a curse, because if you apply the line of thinking like you have done for so long, Cody, with just kind of having the end in mind before you start something. How do we know what to expect 5 years from now? I mean, that's what I think I struggle with the most in this moment where we are in civilization, with a kid that's graduating high school and then a 1.5-year-old and then one in between, is what does their future look like? Because I mean, I don't want to get on a crazy tangent about AI or anything, but I do feel like that's one of these things that, whether or not we like it, is just absolutely an immense, massive, unstoppable force that I don't think any of us completely understand how it's, or what its implications are going to have. Both good and bad, right? Yeah. So it's hard to do a whole lot of like future planning when you don't know what 5 years from now is going to look like from that side. So it's exciting, and I'm trying to lean into the exciting side, because a lot of people are pushing a lot of fear-based focus on AI, and it's healthy skepticism. But hopefully we've got some good days ahead with that as well.
Well, no, and you mentioned kind of the fear with AI, and just this morning, so my experience, I taking the family down to the airport, and normally I'd just jump in my truck and drive up. Gas prices here are getting crazy, and my wife drives a Tesla.
Yeah.
And so she's like, let's just take the Tesla, and then you don't have to worry about gas. And drive them down to the airport, drop them off. On the way back, I'm doing the full self-driving and letting the car drive itself, and decided to get on my phone and check some messages. And the car notifies you if you're not paying attention. And and it's to the point where I know that if I'm not holding the steering wheel, like, it'll notify you every 4 or 5 minutes and tell you to make sure you're paying attention. But I was on my phone and purposely looking at my screen, and it was notifying me every 10 seconds. Pay attention, look up. I'm like, there's cameras inside this car that face the driver. There's awareness that is being, we're being watched. And it's not that I'm scared. I'm like, it's good. I think there's a lot of things that we're learning from it. But yeah, there's an easy way to go down the rabbit hole of being scared that AI is taking over. But I think if we use it and kind of learn from it, it's ways to simplify our life too. So
it's a tool, and I think it comes down to how people elect to utilize it. And I was reading a long, I haven't finished yet. It feels like a book, but it's an article about Sam Altman and OpenAI, and kind of his ousting there briefly, and then him coming back, and kind of how people don't trust him, and all these things. And the story's fascinating, and it does paint a really grim picture for AI. And I'm certainly not without my very heavy dose of skepticism when it comes to all of that, because I do think there's some catastrophic implications. Let's just put it that way. But in the meantime, that's the in between, I think, is the critical part, because you have this tool. You don't know if you're going to have it forever. So why not use it for something, if it's accessible to you and it allows you to grow in a way that you feel is a healthy way for you to grow, then it's a useful tool. It's when people start applying it for things that aren't useful to them, and I've seen too many people rely on AI to answer questions that they should just try to figure out on their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it becomes the easy to do.
You've got your cookbook above your cabinet or whatever, like simple answers, to the point where they're almost like subjugating their critical thinking skills to the AI. and that's the danger of it, I think, more than anything, is people's willingness to give up their own sovereignty and their own thought, and just allow it to do all of it for them. Because I had a salesperson, just a quick little story here. Before I left the US, I was sales manager for a luxury watch store. And I had a salesperson who loved using AI, and she garnered some great information from it, but it wasn't 100% reliable all the time. And every time a customer had a question that she didn't have the answer to, she'd immediately ask AI. And I'm like, that is not the resource you want to be using for that right now. Because first of all, I know AI doesn't know everything about every product in our store. But second of all, is that helping you actually become a better salesperson, or is it making you a weaker one? Yeah. And I think when it comes down to like human skills, that's the biggest threat, is people are willing to give up their own capacity to be a competent human being and just allow this technology to do it for them. And so that's my warning to your listeners as far as AI is concerned, is make sure that you're using it for something that expands your consciousness and your ability to think, and not limit it.
No, and for sure. And that's, I had a thought that was coming to my mind as you were talking, and I tried not to interrupt, and now it's gone, but I know it'll come back.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. I've learned for myself that if I try to hold on to a thought while something else is happening, like the important part is probably what's still coming. So I love the fact that you had brought that up. Like, don't let things limit us. And that, I think, is kind of part of what my message has been, as humans meeting humans, having human connections. And we've gone so far into staying behind the keyboard that people don't know how to speak to each other, and they don't know how to communicate. Right. And everything's an emoji and a like and a heart on your messages versus how to talk. And our family here, we don't watch a lot of TV, but every once in a while we'll put on I just pay for a streaming service, and we just watch things that pop up every once in a while. So we don't do a lot of live TV. But there's a series that we've been watching called... it's going to come to me here. Sorry. Now I can't even remember the word. It'll come to me, but it's basically autistic adults that are learning how to date. Oh, Dating on the Spectrum. Dating on the Spectrum.
Dating on the Spectrum, yeah. I've heard of that, yeah.
And I walked into our TV room while my family was watching it, and I stopped. Like, it caught my attention within 10 seconds. I'm like, these people are communicating exactly the way I would love to be able to communicate. Like, they speak their mind. They say what they're feeling. They don't hold back. And I'm like, that is what is missing, is everybody's trying to protect the other person's feelings, not say something to get them in trouble, or not even saying anything because they don't know how to express their words. And I'm like, if we all could watch that episode, those series, and learn from how to communicate with just open intentions and true heart, like, I think that changes 90% of the problems in the world. But
totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. There's so much dancing around that happens. Relationships obviously are going to be one of the sticking points when it comes to losing communication skills, because where do those first impact our lives? It's our romantic and our family relationships. So yeah, that's definitely where we're going to see the most suffering the quickest, I think, is when we start to allow it to do thinking where we don't have to consider our thoughts and feelings. And really, I think we all have the tendency, maybe not the tendency, but there's this habit that's always available to us, these black screens in our pockets, that as soon as we have a feeling of loneliness or boredom or anything, we can just quick whip that thing out and resolve that and get our dopamine hits. And it eliminates you from having to do those human connections. You can walk down the street, and if you're on the phone, people aren't going to talk to you. They're not going to look at you. And it's a way to just avoid eye contact and avoid human connection. And it's something we should be doing quite the opposite of right now.
Yeah. Well, the other day I was waiting to speak to somebody because they had their AirPods in, and I thought they were on a phone call, or at least listening to something. And so I was waiting, and they just had them in their ear and they told me they would do this because I don't want somebody to talk to me. I'm like, wow, it's crazy. So definitely think that we got a lot of things to help the world with, and some communication is a part of it. But I definitely want to look into your book, and I can't wait to see the clothing line. But I always
Thank you.
Kind of. Oh, go ahead.
No. Okay. I was thanking you. I appreciate that acknowledgement.
What I always like to kind of end things with is just the final question of, as we've gone through kind of your experiences, understanding your book with understanding masculine and the ability to communicate, as well as learning about, your clothing line and doing things that are better for ourselves and our bodies. What would be the message you'd like to share with listeners to kind of give them any insight to what you've learned so far in your life?
Well, I think that I'm going to actually drop back to a paraphrasing of the Bible, and forgive me because I'm not studious in Scripture, nor do I necessarily consider myself a full-on Christian. However, the statement of love thy neighbor like thyself, I think is not taken literally enough by people, because I think they're wise words. Because what I think too many people tend to do is they lean into their empathetic side often, and they say, well, I care about all these other people so much, so that makes me a good person. And it's actually a tendency of selfishness to think that way, because you're trying to resolve this feeling of guilt or shame within yourself of I need to be a better person, and the only way I can be a better person is to show others how much I care about other people. And it's still kind of a performative thing. So I really think that phrase has to start with us. We have to love ourselves and embrace the differences that we all have, and not try to accommodate or acquiesce or blend into our surroundings, but really lean into who we are as individuals and be proud of who we are. And also recognize that while we can be proud of who we are, that doesn't mean that we're perfect. And we have the opportunity to grow. We have the opportunity to improve, and to make that a daily focus. Because it's easy to get out of the bed and to, when you have a hard time, point the finger and say, well, it's because this happened or because of this person. But when you start turning that inward and you say, okay, how can I make my day better? How can I make this situation easier next time? And you put it on yourself. People think that that's a scary thing, but I will tell you, it is the most freeing thing in the world, because now no one else has any influence on your life but you. You have complete and utter authority over your own life, and it's truly the opposite of controlling. It's you get to be free. So that's, I guess, my closing message is recognize that your freedom really starts with you, because it's a matter of how you choose to think about your life. And once you do that, your opportunities they're endless.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate that. That's some very insightful and thoughtful things for a lot of people to think about. So, well, sir, and I truly appreciate the time that we shared together, and I look forward to seeing everything come forward with the clothing line, and I can't wait to get my supply. I would love to order them as soon as they're available. So
you got it, Cody. When I messaged you, I was excited to connect with you, and I didn't expect it was going to be in this forum, but I commend you for taking the initiative to do it, because this is what I want to do too. Is I want people to connect with one another and be able to have conversations. I think that's the missing part of humanity right now. So thanks so much for making the effort.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you travel safely when you come back to the U.S. and definitely enjoy the time in that perfect weather down there.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care now.